Well, good evening. This is your grandpa going to read another part of our story, The Cricket in Times Square. And I want to wish you a happy Easter. Today is Easter Sunday, and I'm sure happy that Jesus rose from the dead, and I hope that you are happy too and can start to understand the full extent of God's great love for each one of us, how He loves us so much that He gave His life, His very life. Jesus willingly went to the cross to provide for us eternal life, and that is a miraculous and a wonderful message that Jesus said, "You are my friends if you do what I command you," and He asked us to love one another. And so, if you remember in our storybook, last time they had a fire because of the party that they were having in the newsstand. And Mama Bellini was very unhappy and blamed the cricket for the troubles, for inviting his rodent friends to the newsstand. But Chester had gone back to the cage, not leaving Mario in a lurch, but wanting to take the blame for what his actions had done. And while he was there, he played some musical selections that he had learned on the radio, from the radio, the night before. And Mama Bellini finally said to Mario, Mario, no cricketer who sings Tornasaranto so beautifully could possibly start a fire. He could stay a while longer. Mario threw his arms around his mother's neck. You hear, said Tucker Mouse. You can stay. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And this is only the beginning. I'll be your manager. Okay, said Chester. And so began the most remarkable week in Chester cricket, or any cricket's life. So chapter 12 is titled Mr. Smedley. And if you remember that Mr. Smedley was the music teacher at one of the local schools. And so it was 2 o'clock in the morning when Chester Cricket's new manager, Tucker Mouse, was finally pacing up and down in front of the cricket cage on the shelf in the newsstand. Harry Cat was lying on the shelf with his tail drooping over the edge, and Chester himself was relaxing in the matchbox. I've been giving this new situation my serious consideration, began Tucker Mouse solemnly. As a matter of fact, I couldn't think of anything else all day. The first thing to understand is, well, Chester Cricket is a very talented person. Hear, hear, said Harry. Chester smiled at him. He was really an awfully nice person, that Harry Cat. The second thing is, talent is something that is rare and beautiful and precious, and it must not be allowed to go to waste. Tucker cleared his throat. And third, there might be, who could tell, a little money in it. I knew that was at the bottom of it, said Harry. A little money. Now wait, just please wait, Harry. Just listen a minute, Harry. Before you go calling me a greedy rodent, said Tucker. He sat down beside Chester and Harry. The newsstand is doing lousy as a business, right? Right. If the Bellinis were happy, Mama Bellini wouldn't be always wanting to get rid of him, right? Right. She likes him today because he played her favorite songs, but who could tell how she might like him tomorrow? And I'd also like to help them out because they've been so good to me, put in Chester Cricket. But naturally, said Tucker, naturally. And if a little bit of the rewards of success should find its way into a drain pipe where lives an old and trusted friend of Chester, well, who's the worse for that? I still don't see how we can make any money, said Chester. I haven't worked out the details yet, said Tucker, but this I can tell you. New York is a place where people are willing to pay for talent. So what's clear is, Chester has got to learn some more music. I personally prefer his own compositions. No offense, Chester. Oh, none taken, said Cricket. I do myself. But the human beings, Tucker went on, being what human beings are. And who could blame them? Well, the human beings would rather hear pieces written by themselves. But how am I going to learn new songs? Asked Chester. Easy as pie, said Tucker Mouse. He darted over to the radio and leaned all his weight on one of the dials and snapped it on. Here's Tucker Mouse prancing around, pacing around, and Harry Cat and Chester Cricket all there, and they're contemplating all what's going to happen and how it's going to be. So, not so loud, said Harry Cat. The people outside will get suspicious. Tucker twisted the dial until a steady, soft stream of music was coming out. Just play it by ear, he said to Chester. And that was the beginning of Chester's formal musical education. On the night of the party, he had just been playing for fun. Now, he seriously set out to actually learn some new human music. And before the night was over, he had memorized 3 movements from different symphonies, half a dozen songs from musical comedies, a solo part from the violin concerto, and 4 hymns, which he picked up on a late-night religious service. The next morning, which was the last Sunday in August, all 3 of the Bellinis came to open the newsstand. They could hardly believe what had happened yesterday, and they were anxious to see if Chester would continue to sing familiar songs. Mario gave the cricket his usual breakfast of mulberry leaves and water, which Chester took his own sweet time eating. He could see that everyone was very nervous, and he sort of enjoyed making them wait a bit. When breakfast was over, he had a good stretch and limbered up his wings. Since it was Sunday, Chester thought it would be nice to start off with the hymn. So he chose to open his concert with Rock of Ages. At the sound of the first notes, the faces of Mama and Papa and Mario broke into smiles. They looked at each other, and their eyes told how happy they were, but they didn't dare to say a word. During the pause after Chester had finished Rock of Ages, Mr. Smedley came up to the newsstand. He wanted to buy his monthly copy of Musical America. His umbrella, neatly folded, was hanging over his arm, as usual. "Hey, Mr. Smedley, my cricket plays hymns," Mario blurted out without even the music teacher having a chance to say good morning. "And opera," said Papa. "And Italian songs," said Mama. "Well, well, well," said Mr. Smedley, who didn't believe a word that they were saying. "I see we've all become very fond of our cricket, but aren't we letting our imagines run away with us just a little bit?" "Oh, no," said Mario. "Just you listen. He'll do it again." Chester took a sip of water and was ready to play some more. This time, however, instead of Rock of Ages, he launched into a stirring performance of Onward, Christian Soldiers. Mr. Smedley's eyes popped. His mouth hung open. The color drained from his face. Do you want to sit down, Mr. Smedley?" asked Papa. "You look a little pale." "I think perhaps I'd better," said Mr. Smedley. He was wiping his forehead with a silk handkerchief. It's rather a shock, you know." He came inside the newsstand and sat on the stool with his face just a few inches away from the cricket cage, and Chester chirped the second verse of Onward, Christian Soldiers and finished with a soaring "Amen." While the organist, he said, the organist played that in church this morning," said Mr. Smedley. "It didn't sound half as good. And of course, the cricket isn't as loud as an organ, but what he lacks in volume, wow, he makes up for in sweetness." "That was nothing," said Papa Bellini proudly. "You should hear him play Ada." "May I try an experiment?" asked Mr. Smedley. All the Bellinis said yes at the same time. The music teacher whistled a scale. Chester flexed his wings. Quickly as you could run your fingers up the strings of a harp, he played the exact scale on perfect pitch. Mr. Smedley took off his glasses and wiped his moist eyes. He has absolute pitch," said the shaky voice. I've only met one other person who had perfect pitch. She was a soprano named Abriella Heffelfinger. Chester started to play again. He went through the 2 other hymns that he had learned, the Rosary and the Mighty Fortress is Our God, and then he did the violin concerto. Naturally, he couldn't play it just as it was written without the whole orchestra backing him up. Here's a picture of Mr. Smedley watching the cricket play the various songs that he's learned. But even though he didn't have the full orchestra, he was magnificent, all things considered. Once Mr. Smedley got used to the idea that he was listening to a concert given by cricket, he enjoyed the performance very much. He had a special praise for Chester's phrasing, which meant the neat way that the cricket played all the notes of a passage without letting them slide together. And sometimes, when he had been deeply moved by a section, the music teacher would touch his chest over his heart and say, "That cricket has it right here." As Chester chirped his way through the program, a crowd collected around the newsstand, and after each new piece, the people applauded and congratulated the Bellinis on their remarkable cricket. Mama and Papa were fit to burst with pride, and Mario was very happy too. But of course, he had thought all summer that Chester was a very unusual person. When the playing was over, Mr. Smedley stood up and shook hands with Papa and Mama and Mario. "I want to thank you for the most delightful hour I have ever spent," he said. "The whole world should know about this cricket." A light suddenly appeared and spread over his face. "Why, I believe I shall write a letter to the musical editor of the New York Times," he said. "They'd certainly be impressed." And this is the letter that Mr. Smedley wrote. To the music editor of New York Times and to the people of New York. "Rejoice, O New Yorkers, for a musical miracle has come to pass in our city. This very day, Sunday, August 28th, surely a day which will go down in musical history, it was my pleasure and my privilege to be present at the most beautiful recital ever heard in a lifetime devoted to sublime music, to the sublime art of music, that is. Being a musicologist myself and having graduated with honors from the well-known local school of music, I feel I am qualified to judge such matters, and I say, without hesitation, that never have such strains been heard in New York before." But who was the artist, one may ask? The eager music lover will ask, who was the artist? Was it perchance a new singer, just lately arrived from a triumphant tour of the capitals of Europe? No, music lovers, it was not. Then was it a violinist who pressed his cheek with love against the darling violin as he played? Wrong again, music lovers. Could it have been a pianist with sensitive long fingers that drew magic sounds from shining ivory keys? Ah, music lovers, you will never guess. It was a cricket. A simple cricket, no longer than half my little finger, which is rather long because I have played the piano for many years, but a cricket nonetheless, that is able to chirp operatic, symphonic, and popular music. Am I wrong, then, to describe such an event as a miracle? And where is this extraordinary performer? Not in Carnegie Hall, oh no, music lovers. Not in the Metropolitan Opera House, no, music lovers. You will find him in the newsstand run by the Bellini family in the subway station at Times Square. I urge you, I implore you, every man, woman, and child who has music in his soul, not to miss one of his illustrations, nay, his glorious concerts. Enchantedly yours, Horatio P. Smedley. P.S. I give piano lessons. For information, write to P.H. Smedley, 1578 West 63rd Street, New York, New York. And that was Mr. Smedley's letter to the New York Times. We'll see what happens tomorrow. God bless you, children. I hope that you have a blessed Easter and that you're able soon, that we are all able to go back to church and enjoy worshiping together with one another. I hope to see you soon. I'll read some more from our storybook tomorrow. God bless. Bye.